Welcome back. Today I wanted to narrate for you the case of Thomas W. Piper. He was a serial killer with at least 2 victims to his name, maybe even more, and he was active between 1873 and 1875. At least the girls, 2 of his victims, were murdered in those 2 years specifically. So let's go over the wiki and see what it has to say. They started out by saying the following concerning his early life. He was originally from Nova Scotia. He was the second-born son of farmer T.C. Piper. Thomas worked as a carpenter on a farm his family owned, before moving with them to Boston in 1866, occasionally working for his father, but aspiring to do better things. Regarding as literate and clever, he had worked at several clerking jobs around the city and was an avid Baptist church goer, which resulted in him being hired as a sexton for the Warren Avenue Baptist Church. Piper also had some sort of kidney disorder, which he treated with a secret addiction, using laudanum mixed with alcohol, which caused hallucinations. Unbeknownst to many, he started committing acts of arson before moving on to his first murder. Now, his first murder was that of Bridget Landrigan. On the night of December 5th, 1873, while walking with 2 of his brothers to the church in Dorchester, Piper suddenly told them that he wasn't feeling well and wanted to go back home. He first went to a place which sold opium and mixed it with alcohol, drinking it all before returning to his house. He then took a saw and sawed off a piece of shaft before exiting the house, walking around some and hiding under a fence. Soon after, a fire alarm was rung, and when the commotion quieted down, Piper was standing on the street with his brother when he noticed a young woman walking down the street, Bridget Landrigan, a domestic servant of good repute, returning to her mistress' home. The brothers went inside the house, with Thomas claiming he was going to go to bed, but instead went down to the kitchen, grabbed the shaft and began walking after the woman. He stalked her for some time until they reached Columbia Street, at which point Bridget, the woman, noticed him. At that moment, he struck her with the shaft, causing her to fall down before hitting her again, breaking her skull. Before he could do anything with the body, he noticed that a man was coming down the street, so he got up and began running. He climbed over a fence going along the railroad, taking a roundabout way to his home, disposing of a knife that he thought could be recognized as his along the way. Several arrests were made concerning the case, including Piper, but he was initially discharged due to a lack of evidence. A former lover of Landrigan, an Irish man named Thomas Cahill, was extradited from his home country after detectives wanted to question him. However, no evidence could link the murder to him, and he soon returned to Ireland, where he himself was murdered. In 1874, while visiting the downtown area of Boston, Piper met Tyner, a prostitute, on Lagrange Street. Both engaged in conversation, with Thomas inviting her to a saloon, to which Mary agreed. After they had some drinks together, Piper and Mary went to her house, where they soon fell asleep. In the middle of the night, Thomas suddenly woke up and, noticing that his companion was asleep, he grabbed a hammer-like object and struck her several times on the head with it. He then promptly left the house by exiting through a window, opting to sleep in the church for the rest of the night. Although Mary survived the attack, she was unable to identify her attacker and was sent to live out her days as an inmate of a lunatic asylum. A former lover of hers named Colby was arrested, but later released due to a lack of evidence. On May 23, 1875, a 5-year-old girl named Mabel Hood Young was attending a service in the Warren Avenue Baptist Church, where Piper worked as a sexton. Thomas had taken a bat from the lower room with the intention to kill somebody with it, up to the belfry. After the service ended, he sent away the boys playing in the vestibule and lured the young Mabel to the tower with the promise of showing her the pigeons. When they went in there, he struck the young girl on the head with the bat a few times, causing her to fall down. He intended to rape her, thinking that Young was dead, but when he realized she wasn't, he moved the badly injured girl to another place, where she was soon found. He was arrested, but Mabel died from her injuries the following day. His first trial, prosecuted by Suffolk County District Attorney Oliver Stevens, ended in a hung jury as he constantly protested his innocence, adding to the fact that there was no real reason or evidence to convict him in the case, resulting in 9 voting for a conviction but 3 for an acquittal. In the second trial, headed by Attorney General Charles R. Train, they managed to convict him with circumstantial evidence. He first appeared stoically indifferent in court, but began to look increasingly concerned on his way back to the cell. He hastily began writing a letter addressed to his mother, in which he wrote that he hoped he would be acquitted, but knew it wouldn't happen. Although this attempt at earning sympathy from the public was unsuccessful, prior to his conviction, his invented story of how Mabel was murdered was considered credible before he admitted it was false. Initially, Piper claimed that he had wanted to show Mabel the pigeons, but the air was stuffy and he decided to open the window to let some fresh air in. He held it down with the bat and left for a moment, but when he returned, he noticed that the trapdoor had fallen on Young's head. Afraid of being accused of assault, he fled downstairs to tell a few of the women about the accident, but remained silent out of fear. The motive for the crime was suggested as being pure lust for bloodshed, and under pressure from the whole ordeal, Piper confessed to Young's murder. To the shock of the Boston population, he confessed to other crimes as well, including the murder of Londrigan, the arsons, the assault on Tyner, and that he also murdered a girl named Minnie Sullivan, although there wasn't enough evidence to convict him in the other cases. He was sentenced to death for the murder of Mabel Young. He tried to appeal his sentence unsuccessfully. His execution was attended by at least 300 people, and he was executed by hanging on May 26, 1876, along with the Petersham murderer Samuel J. Frost. His body was then privately buried at the Mount Hope Cemetery. Following his execution, Piper's family asked that Thomas' written and detailed confession of the crimes, which was given to Sheriff John M. Clark, not be released to the public. Clark agreed with the plea, as the majority of Piper's crimes were already known to the public and nobody wanted to further horrors to the terrible deeds of the murderer. Yes, absolutely horrifying and disgusting, and also fucking bizarre. Bizarre as all hell. This guy going to church, an absolute psychopath behind a sheep's mask going on there. Seems like an innocent man, but then when he goes there into that church and nobody's watching, he goes haywire, starts killing people, and a 5-year-old girl lost her life, and somebody else lost their life. Another person got assaulted and thrown into an insane asylum. Now that's interesting. Did they think she was insane for the claims she made? That's also very tragic for that woman. But other than that, maybe she was insane besides, being assaulted by this man. I don't know. We don't know. We haven't known her in person. Maybe that was the reason why she ended up there. But if it was because they thought she made up the story of assault, or that it was like some crazy situation where they thought it was self-inflicted, or she was just on drugs and accidentally hurt herself and then made up a story of assault, therefore she needed to go to a lunatic asylum. If that's the case, well, then it makes it extra tragic what happened to that woman. But I guess only the universe knows for sure. Anyways, I hope the victims are resting in peace, and at least we can be glad that this madman has been long gone. He actually died at the age of 27. He's a fairly young person as well, already doing crazy stuff like this. Then again, regardless of the age, murder is murder, and he got what he deserved. As always, dear viewer, have sweet dreams.